Picture this. You're at your 10-year high school reunion. The valedictorian, the one who scored perfect SATs and graduated from an Ivy League university, is discussing their respectable but modest career. Meanwhile, the class clown who barely passed algebra just arrived in a BMW and casually mentions their thriving business. This isn't just anecdotal. Research from Boston College found that students who graduated with the highest GPAs aren't necessarily the highest earners 20 years later. And a longitudinal study tracking thousands of gifted children into adulthood revealed that exceptional academic achievement often translates into good, but rarely extraordinary financial outcomes. The correlation between academic brilliance and financial success is far weaker than we've been led to believe. This counterintuitive reality challenges everything we've been taught about success. We're told from childhood that studying hard and being smart is the path to prosperity. Yet the real world frequently tells a different story. Today we're going to explore why being dumb might actually be your ticket to financial success. Before you close this video thinking I'm advocating for willful ignorance, hear me out. The truth is far more nuanced and might completely change how you approach your career and financial future. From childhood, we're measured by our ability to memorize information, apply formulas, and produce correct answers under time pressure. These metrics create our understanding of who's smart and who isn't. But the market measures value differently. As investor Charlie Munger noted, you need to learn how to recognize when you're operating under a faulty mental model. The mental model many of us internalize is that academic performance predicts financial performance. But this model breaks down because it overlooks a crucial distinction. Academic environments reward compliance and precision, while markets reward problem-solving and value creation, often regardless of how elegantly the solution is packaged. This mismatch explains why many academically average entrepreneurs flourish, while brilliant academics sometimes flounder in commercial environments. Take Richard Branson, for example. Despite struggling with dyslexia and dropping out of school at 16, he built Virgin into a multi-billion-dollar empire spanning dozens of industries. What standardized tests missed was his exceptional ability to identify market opportunities, build teams, and create customer-focused solutions. Qualities rarely measured in academic settings, but highly valued in entrepreneurial ones. The real question isn't how smart you are by academic standards, but whether your particular forms of intelligence align with what the market actually values. How might your own perception of intelligence be limiting your financial potential? One of the most fascinating paradoxes of high intelligence is how it can actually inhibit financial progress through what psychologists call the paradox of choice. The ability to see endless possibilities often leads to taking no possibilities at all. Those with exceptional analytical abilities typically excel at identifying potential problems, variables, and contingencies. They can visualize complex decision trees with numerous branches and outcomes. While this is theoretically advantageous, it frequently leads to decision paralysis or perpetual preparation. Research from Princeton University found that when faced with complex decisions with uncertain outcomes, those with higher cognitive abilities often experience greater anxiety and delayed decision-making. They get trapped in what psychologists call maximizing behavior, the endless pursuit of the optimal choice rather than a satisfactory one. Meanwhile, those with more modest analytical abilities may see fewer options, but act more decisively on the ones they do see. They employ what psychologist Herbert Simon termed satisficing, accepting good enough solutions rather than endlessly searching for the best possible outcome. This decisiveness advantage extends beyond just individual choices to entire career strategies, and often separates those who build wealth from those who merely contemplate it. Many brilliant individuals fall into what we call the credentials trap. investing years, and substantial resources, accumulating impressive but increasingly marginal qualifications, while their more pragmatic peers are building businesses, networks, and income streams. Consider the contrast between two paths. Path A, 4 years of undergraduate study, 2 years for a master's degree, perhaps another 4 to 6 for a PhD. By age 30, this person has impressive credentials, but has spent approximately $300,000 on education while earning minimal income. Path B, enter the workforce at 18, develop practical skills through experience, build a network, identify market opportunities, and potentially start a business by 25. By 30, this person has 12 years of income, experience, and compound business growth. The traditional advice that education always pays off financially contains a hidden assumption that the opportunity cost of extended education isn't significant. But compound interest works on experience and business growth, just as it does on investments. Sometimes the shortest path to wealth is straight into the marketplace, not through the classroom. Let's acknowledge some critical nuances here. The student debt crisis has dramatically changed the education equation. When previous generations graduated with minimal debt, the long-term financial benefits of education often outweighed the costs. Today, with average student loan balances exceeding $37,000, the math has changed significantly. Many graduates spend decades paying off education debt, which substantially delays wealth accumulation. Additionally, the value of credentials varies dramatically by field. In medicine, law, engineering, and other regulated professions, credentials aren't optional. They're legal requirements for practice. In these fields, education represents an unavoidable investment rather than a debatable choice. Social mobility factors also complicate this picture. For those from disadvantaged backgrounds, education often remains the most reliable path to middle-class stability, if not extraordinary wealth. Without family connections or startup capital, credentials can provide access to opportunities otherwise unavailable. The real question becomes, given your specific circumstances and goals, what's the optimal investment strategy for your time and resources? What would happen if you invested your next $50,000 in starting a business instead of another degree? While entrepreneurial success stories capture our imagination, they can create a distorted picture of how financial success typically happens. For every self-made billionaire who dropped out of college, millions of others tried similar paths and struggled financially. Let's explore how social context shapes these outcomes in ways that raw intelligence or effort alone cannot explain. What we often overlook in success narratives is the critical role of timing, geographic location, and economic conditions. The tech entrepreneurs of the 1990s benefited from being in the right industry at the right historical moment. Similarly, real estate investors who purchased property before certain market booms created wealth through timing as much as through skill. Access to capital represents another crucial factor rarely highlighted in success stories. Angel investors and venture capitalists disproportionately fund entrepreneurs who match their demographic profile or come through trusted networks. Studies show that women receive less than 3% of venture capital funding despite owning 40% of businesses. Similar disparities exist along racial lines. This doesn't mean entrepreneurial success is purely luck or privilege. Skill, perseverance, and judgment matter enormously. But recognizing these contextual factors helps us understand why similar talents and efforts produce dramatically different outcomes for different people. Success is rarely just about what you know or how hard you work. It's also about when, where, and with whom you apply your efforts. Rather than focusing exclusively on exceptional individual success stories, we might learn more from examining broader patterns. What environments consistently produce financial success across diverse populations? What systems enable more people to translate their particular forms of intelligence into financial security? Perhaps the most significant factor separating financial outcomes involves what sociologists call social capital, the ability to build and leverage relationships effectively. Research consistently shows that most job opportunities and business deals flow through personal connections rather than formal applications. One study found that approximately 70% of all jobs are filled through networking rather than job postings. This creates what we might call a network premium, the financial advantage that comes from effective relationship building. Who you know often determines the opportunities you can access, regardless of what you know. This network advantage operates across the socioeconomic spectrum, but manifests differently at different levels. In working-class communities, strong ties to neighbors and extended family provide crucial support and job referrals. In professional contexts, weak ties, acquaintances from different social circles, often provide the most valuable opportunities by connecting people to entirely new networks. Those who navigate social environments comfortably often gain access to opportunities, information, and resources that remain invisible to others. They learn about job openings before they're posted, receive mentoring from influential figures, and secure introductions to key decision-makers. The financially successful typically develop what psychologists call social intelligence, the ability to read social cues, build rapport across different groups, and maintain relationships over time. This skill helps them assemble the teams, partnerships, and support networks that amplify their own capabilities. This network advantage creates another key pattern: the outsized returns that come from connecting different worlds. Some of the most substantial financial opportunities emerge at the boundaries between different fields, industries, or social groups. Those who can translate across these boundaries, bringing ideas from one domain into another, often create exceptional value. Consider how Steve Jobs bridged technology and design to transform Apple. His unique advantage wasn't superior technical knowledge or aesthetic talent, but his ability to connect these previously separate worlds. Similarly, fitness entrepreneur Cassie Ho built a $6 million business by bridging fitness instruction, social media expertise, and product development. The ability to see connections between seemingly unrelated domains often creates more value than depth in any single domain. This bridge-building advantage helps explain why generalists sometimes outperform specialists financially. While deep expertise provides value within established domains, connecting disparate fields often creates entirely new value categories. The academically brilliant frequently develop depth in narrow domains, while those with broader interests may develop the cross-domain fluency that spots these connection opportunities. Of course, the most successful often combine depth and breadth, developing what writer David Epstein calls range alongside expertise. They master fundamental principles in multiple domains rather than surface-level knowledge of many topics or exhaustive details in a single area. Another crucial difference between the academically accomplished and the financially successful involves their approach to risk, particularly how they evaluate potential downsides against potential upsides. Traditional education often emphasizes risk avoidance and error prevention. Academic success typically comes from minimizing mistakes rather than maximizing opportunities. This creates what psychologists call prevention focus, an orientation toward avoiding negative outcomes rather than pursuing positive ones. The financially successful don't take more risks. They take better calibrated risks with limited downside and open-ended upside. The stories of early cryptocurrency adopters illustrate this principle. While many financial experts dismissed cryptocurrency as fundamentally worthless, applying traditional valuation models, many everyday investors applied a different calculus. If I invest an amount I can afford to lose completely, my downside is limited. If this succeeds, my upside is potentially life-changing. This asymmetric betting approach where the potential gain significantly exceeds the potential loss, characterizes many financially successful decisions. It's not about recklessness, but about recognizing opportunities where the math favors action despite uncertainty. However, this approach requires financial resilience that isn't universally available. Someone living paycheck to paycheck can't afford even small losses that someone with greater resources can easily absorb. Economic precarity forces risk aversion regardless of cognitive approach. The same opportunity that represents an acceptable risk for someone with savings might represent an existential threat to someone without a financial cushion. Perhaps the most underappreciated advantage that practically minded individuals often possess is their relationship with feedback, particularly how quickly they collect and incorporate real-world information. Academic environments typically feature long feedback loops. You might study for months before an exam or spend years researching before publishing. These extended cycles create thoroughness but can slow adaptation. Market environments, by contrast, often provide immediate feedback. Sales numbers, customer responses, and profit margins deliver unambiguous signals about what's working and what isn't. When you learn from direct feedback rather than abstract evaluation, you develop more effective mental models more quickly. Those comfortable with direct market feedback often develop their capabilities faster than those who rely on more abstract measures of success. They build what psychologist Carol Dweck calls a growth mindset, valuing improvement over validation. The academically oriented often perfect their approach before testing it. The market-oriented test quickly, learn from results, and iterate. Over time, this creates a compounding advantage in practical knowledge. This speed of learning applies beyond just individual skills to entire businesses and careers. The financially successful typically create what entrepreneurs call tight feedback loops, systems that rapidly reveal what's working and what isn't. This allows for course correction before small problems become major setbacks. At this point, it's important to transcend the false dichotomy I've been using. The truth isn't that academic intelligence is worthless, while practical intelligence is everything. The most successful individuals integrate multiple forms of intelligence and recognize when each is most valuable. Success doesn't require choosing between different forms of intelligence. It requires deploying each form in contexts where it creates value. Consider the pharmaceutical industry, where scientific brilliance creates breakthrough medications, but business acumen and regulatory understanding bring those medications to market. Or technology, where deep technical knowledge builds products, but user psychology and market intuition make those products relevant. The highest achievers often develop what psychologists call cognitive flexibility, the ability to shift between different thinking modes based on the demands of the situation. They can be analytical when analyzing problems, creative when generating solutions, practical when implementing plans, and social when building teams. If you identify as someone with strong academic intelligence looking to improve financial outcomes, consider these strategic approaches. First, develop hypothesis testing habits. Apply the scientific method to practical problems. Form a hypothesis about what might create value, design a small experiment to test it, and iterate based on results. This leverages analytical thinking in contexts that reward practical outcomes. Second, cultivate decision frameworks. Rather than getting lost in analysis, develop clear criteria for when you have enough information to act. Establish thresholds that trigger decisions rather than endless evaluation. Third, build complementary partnerships. Identify individuals with different cognitive strengths and create mutually beneficial relationships. The market rewards effective teams more than brilliant individuals. Fourth, practice progressive exposure to uncertainty. Systematically increase your comfort with ambiguity through gradual exposure rather than avoiding it entirely. Start with small, low-stakes decisions and gradually expand your comfort zone. Fifth, develop awareness of your own cognitive patterns. Learn to recognize when you're optimizing for intellectual satisfaction rather than practical outcomes, and consciously redirect your focus when appropriate. The goal isn't abandoning your intellectual strengths, but applying them strategically in domains that reward them financially. Any honest discussion of financial success must acknowledge the broader systems that shape individual outcomes. Personal attributes like intelligence type, risk tolerance, and social skills operate within economic and social structures that amplify some advantages while neutralizing others. Income inequality has grown dramatically over recent decades, concentrating wealth in fewer hands regardless of relative intelligence or effort. Intergenerational wealth transfers create starting advantages disconnected from personal attributes. Geographic location determines access to opportunities, networks, and capital. Industry structures reward certain skills disproportionately during particular historical periods. Individual attributes matter enormously, but they operate within systems that can magnify or minimize their impact. This systemic perspective doesn't diminish personal agency, but contextualizes it. We can simultaneously acknowledge systemic factors while developing personal strategies that work within or around these constraints. For those starting with fewer advantages, the path may be longer and require more strategic navigation. Building particular skills that command premium compensation within your accessible industry may prove more reliable than entrepreneurial paths that require significant startup capital. Creating collective resources through partnerships or cooperatives might overcome individual capital constraints. Throughout this exploration, we've examined why individuals with average academic credentials often out-earn the academically brilliant. We've seen how differences in decision-making, risk assessment, social connection, implementation focus, and feedback utilization create financial advantages that traditional metrics of intelligence don't capture. We've also acknowledged the critical role of systemic factors, from access to capital and education to economic conditions and industry structures, that create different opportunity landscapes for different people. Success rarely comes solely from individual attributes, but emerges from the interaction between personal capabilities and contextual factors. The most valuable intelligence isn't measured by credentials, but by outcomes, by the problem solved and the value created within your specific context. The market doesn't pay for what you know. It pays for the value you create using what you know. Understanding this fundamental principle transforms how we approach both education and career development, allowing us to make strategic choices aligned with financial goals, rather than default assumptions about success. If this perspective has challenged your thinking or offered new insights, please share this video with someone who might benefit from it. And I'd love to hear in the comments. Which aspect of this discussion most resonated with your experience? Have you seen these patterns play out in your own career or the lives of people you know? Until next time, remember that intelligence takes many forms, and financial success follows those who develop and integrate the forms that create value in their specific marketplace context.